Hi, I'm Tom Laux. Thank you for joining me on my Connections program. And today I have Nick Kumm, the General Manager of Marshfield Utilities, with me. And we're going to talk about quite a few things that'll hopefully help you out, especially if a storm comes. We've all been inundated by storms this year, and they seem to be getting worse. But we have some good tips that Nick's going to share with me, and I appreciate him coming by for my show Connections. And first, I'm going to have Nick introduce himself. He's been here a little over a year and a half, and I will turn it to you, Nick.
Well, thank you, Tom. Thanks for having me. As you mentioned, I've been with Marshfield Utilities actually on almost 18 years now, and worked up through the ranks, and currently general manager for the last year and a half. Actually, I was born and raised in the area. I'm from Pittsville, Wisconsin. Grew up on a dairy farm, so grew up on the farm, went to college, and came back, and here we are today.
Well, that's great. You're from the area, and you're able to work here and do some great service. Without the utility, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. We'd be in the dark.
Right.
So very beneficial to what we all do. So why don't we get right into it and talk about what I mentioned, the storms. And you've given me some great questions to ask you, and I think that'll definitely help customers of yours as well as any viewers that most of our viewers will be your customer, I'm assuming, how that works. So let's talk about recent storms and the impacts to customers. I know we've all heard that. Just kind of recap a little bit of those events.
Sure. Back in July, on the 19th and 20th, we had 2 different rounds of storms come through the area, both with a heavy dose of wind and lightning and heavy rains. And those impacted our customers. We had about 20% of our customer base, or about 2,500 customers, actually lose power for some for a few hours, up to over a day in some situations.
All right. Well, we all know that without power, it's hard to do our jobs, our life, live our life. We kind of all take it for granted. I think everybody does. None of us probably ever have lived back in the days of no power. So it's something that is a necessity in our lives, and I guess people when it goes off instantly are not maybe prepared, and we'll get to maybe talk about maybe some ideas to prepare here down the road. But I know one question that I'm sure a lot of customers have is how does MU prioritize the process of getting it back online?
Sure. With the new meters that we put in a few years ago, they provide us information as they lose power. They tell us that they're out without power. And from that list, we're able to kind of figure out the largest pockets that are without power. In general, our first area of focus, though, is to work with the local fire and police department. With the fire department, with lightning strikes and such, sometimes they can start fires, and the fire department wants to have us, make sure the power's off so they can do their work safely and quickly. And the police department will call in situations where there's wires down across roads, obviously for public safety and so forth. So we try to help on that area first. And then from there we'll move on to try to attack the largest areas that we can hopefully do a little bit of work and get the most customers on it at one time. And then from there we just we keep moving down the road, if you will, and just try to triage any new things that come up and get the power on as quickly as possible.
All right. Well, when the power goes off, there definitely hits a concern. How do you guys get notified of that? Is it a computer? Is it a cell phone? I'm just kind of curious myself how the notification to MU of there's a problem, because you're not always there, I don't think, 24/7. Is that right?
Correct. We're not staffed 24/7. We do use a after-hours third party to handle calls of that nature. Or answering service.
Mm-hmm.
What the meters do is they send a signal into our server system, and then that'll actually send a text to many of our staff in the electric department along with that answering service, and that'll help get the ball rolling on getting our staff dispatched to address the outages.
All right. Well, earlier, just a bit ago, I should say, is you talked about the importance of safety. And that is really your first piece of business when we lose power. So you're saying you get police and fire at the scene. I guess I want you to stress the importance of down lines, because we hear it all the time that people go out and start with a chainsaw when maybe they shouldn't. What should they do when they see a downed line? wait for you, wait for the police, or take a risk? Not a risk, I wouldn't think.
Right, definitely not a risk. I think the first thing to do is make sure they keep their own distance and make sure they manage their own safety and keep others away from the area as well. Then call the utility so that we can come out and take a look at what's going on and try to identify if there's a hazard or not, or at least take the power off if need be. One of the challenges we face is that the overhead lines throughout town are not only ours, but we have the local cable provider and a local phone provider have cables as well. And unfortunately, a lot of times the situations are those cables. So we'll come out and we'll usually identify if they're ours or not, and then we'll move things around. Unfortunately, if they're the other provider's equipment, we just have to push it off to the side and let them know that they need to address it. But yeah, the biggest thing, as you mentioned, though, is to keep the area safe and not let any others go into the area. I know the police department's very good about that, is making sure they barricade off an area until someone can come in that's qualified to assess the situation.
Yeah, because you guys have the tools to know if anything is live,
Right.
Without hurting any safety of themselves or anybody else. Let's talk about homeowners' equipment when it becomes damaged by a tree falling or a severe storm. Who's liable for that?
Yeah, when storms come through and they take trees down, many times they'll take down the overhead wires that come into a house. Those wires are connected to a mast pipe or a pipe that extends above the roof line. And that pipe is the customer's responsibility or the homeowner's responsibility. So the first step that they should do is give the utility a call so that we can come out and make sure the situation's safe. Many times we de-energize the power because once that pipe is bent, we really don't know what's going on inside of it. The next call should probably be their insurance company, just to find out how the insurance company would like to see them address the situation. And then the third step in that process is contacting a local contractor, electrical contractor that's authorized to do that type of repair. The contractor will come and as they're able to and make the repairs and then work with us to get the power re-energized once things are fixed.
Okay. Well, different towns run their lines differently, and I guess you can kind of tell me, I think a lot of the lines here in our area are above. You're telling me that's a pipe on the roof. Are there places yet that, or new places maybe that are underground? Does that exist? And then that could be another area that they would be maybe liable into the home?
Yeah, I would say predominantly a lot of our new installations to homes and businesses are underground. In those situations, luckily when storms come through, we don't really see the extent of the outages and so forth for those homes. But underground is definitely a way that can be fed into a house.
Yeah, and I bet that's a benefit, excuse me, about having lines not in the air. But you know, that's a lot of infrastructure to change in a city. Right. It cost a fortune to change that. So I'm sure with new home constructions, new subdivisions, that's looked into. So.
Yeah, definitely. We're that's one of the areas of focus. We try to encourage underground installations whenever we can, and we're trying to, as we have a very capital-intense program where we're replacing our aged equipment, and as we're doing that, we're trying to look at situations and see if if it makes sense to convert the areas to underground.
All right. Well, we had a lot of outages, and I guess one of your questions is what causes those outages was probably definitely that storm, and it knocks a certain area out, right? It just doesn't knock one home or two homes out. It could knock out 20 homes, 50 homes at a time.
Yeah, I mean, we had single isolated outages that knocked out one house, and we had another situation where it took out we call it a feeder. So basically a larger section took up upwards of 1,000 homes or meters out of power for a period of time. Our system is set up very unique. It's developed over time, and it's kind of like your house. You know, if you have a breaker trip and the lights in the living room are off, and then one light off and one bedroom's off, but another bedroom works, that's kind of how our system is set up. So sometimes when customers call and they're like, well, I don't have power, but my neighbors do, and I don't understand why. It's just the complexity of the system and how it's been designed over time.
All right. Well, if you're just joining us here on Marshfield Media Access, again, thank you for joining me. I'm Tom Laux, the Director of Communications for the City of Marshfield. I'm sitting with Nick Kumm. He's the General Manager of our utility, and we're going to know him a bit better and know what the utility is all about and what they do when a big storm hits. So again, thanks for tuning in. You can always watch us on our Facebook page as well and on our city's Facebook page. And soon we'll have a website called marshfieldmediaaccess.org that you'll be able to see this video as well. So, and we're going to share it to the utility, and we'll see. They have a Facebook page as well, so tune into that. Like it. There's a lot of good stuff on there. They report a lot of things that are happening on there from their staff, and that'll maybe answer some of your questions that are out there. Well, Nick, we got some more questions. You guys did a lot of work, I should say, within around the state. We were really lucky with that big storm. There were power companies all over the place, up north, maybe even east of us here in Wisconsin Rapids. That did your crew? It's kind of a network of friends in a way that help each other out, because power, you buy power too from other power companies. So, what was that like for your staff to go and help other communities?
It was great. It's a great experience to be able to go help other communities. As you mentioned, there's 81 municipal or public power utilities throughout the state of Wisconsin, and like you mentioned, we're somewhat of a family. So when one's in need, they put the call out, and others, come in to try to help. As you mentioned, Wisconsin Rapids is one of those communities that they have roughly 14,000, 15,000 customers, and I think they had outages to nearly 13,000 of their customers. So a large amount, and they put the call out, and I believe through the membership of the public utilities, I think we had nearly 100 linemen show up to help a small community that normally only has 8 to 10 linemen to help put their system back together. They had nearly over 150 poles break due to the storms that came through, and replacing a pole is not something that just happens in a matter of minutes. It obviously takes many hours to get those things done. So it was great that we were able to fix everything here locally, and then we sent the crew over there to help for the better part of a week and help get that system back up.
Yeah, a lot of work to bring those poles in different lengths, because they're not all the same length, I would think. Big drill on your big rigs, and you have to have a few guys to put that in.
Yeah, and you need all different types of equipment, because obviously you're going, like you said, different size poles, things of that nature. And I think the value to our customers in sending our staff members there is really the learning experience that our crews get from those situations. They bring back tips, and they bring back ideas on how we can improve our system, but also be prepared if for someday in the future the situation might happen here more locally where we need to call on others.
Yeah, definitely. It will happen, guaranteed.
Yes.
You just don't know when and where, but seems like it's happening more. I don't know. Maybe it's the news or the amount of social media that's out there versus it used to be 10 years ago or 15. But we all know there's storms coming. We've seen them.
Yeah,
so let's talk about how to reduce the outage lengths. I mean, you guys, again, are doing a lot of work rebuilding underground, like you mentioned. This will help reduce the time by new technology.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we're obviously rebuilding our older infrastructure as well. And as I mentioned, looking at putting things underground. I think another area that we've really focused on more in the more recent years is proactive tree trimming. So we're trying to, try to get those trees that are close to our lines. Throughout our neighborhood, we love seeing all the, the beautiful mature trees. And unfortunately, I think we're starting to see some of those trees are at the end of their life. And we're trying to help identify those and remove those that might cause issues. So as part of our tree program, we're trimming in situations where we're doing complete removals and others. And the other area that we're trying to focus on as we go around and we see, new young growth of trees is try to identify those early so that they don't become a hazard tree in the future that we have to trim and that we have to work with the customer and things of that nature.
And really, it's all those trees that are in our right-of-way that you really have to be careful about too, right? And now, do you guys handle the tree cutting, or are there with another service? How does that work? Because the lines are probably live when you're doing that.
Right. Yeah. Definitely the lines are live. On a day-to-day basis, we use a contracted service to do the majority of our tree trimming throughout our territory. However, if a customer calls, we definitely will go out and meet with them to look at the situation and determine how we can help them out And normally they're working with a contractor, so we'll help work with that contractor so that everything can be done safely and that no one gets injured, and obviously none of the equipment's broke in the process.
All right. Well, you're kind of like me in a little bit, not me, but our station and how we serve. We're funded here by the city's franchise fees, which are right-of-way fees, but we transmit further out. And you guys do work further out than the city of Marshfield. What is your territory?
Yeah, our territory is a little unique. It's we cover the city proper, the city limits, but then in general we extend out maybe 5 to 7 miles in any direction from the city limits. So roughly covering about 120 square miles, of which the city covers about 35 of those miles. So you can tell we definitely are in the rural area as well as the city area.
Yeah, because you're out towards Spencer in that area, all through there,
Yep.
and serve that area. Do you serve? You don't serve Spencer and Stratford, then other larger communities?
We serve the village of Hewitt,
Okay.
as far as more of an organized community and a bunch of townships around the area. We do provide support to Stratford. They don't have many individuals on staff that work in the field, so they call us and we help them out as well.
All right. I think this is a really important piece that we need to talk about, is giving some tips to customers so food doesn't go bad. Give us a few tips that maybe you guys know that we can share.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things I want to hit on just before the tips is now's the time that we should be preparing. We shouldn't be trying to prepare when the storm is either bearing down on us or has already passed. So I hope everyone takes this opportunity to think about what they're doing on their day-to-day activities and thinking, all right, if I don't have electricity, how is this activity going to be different? As far as more specific tips, I think those that are on medications or maybe use some type of devices for their health, they really should be communicating with their physicians and making sure that they understand how they should react if they're without power for an extended period of time. I think looking at your home and seeing if maybe a backup generator or a DC powered sump pump is something that would be advantageous if the power was to go out again in the future. Some other tips, if the power goes out, try to turn one light switch on in your house so that when the power does come back on, it's on. Also, try to, if the power goes out, don't go into the freezer or the refrigerator as often. Try to keep those things closed and let them keep the coolness or the cold in, if you will. Those are probably some of the major tips that we have. We have added some resources to our website. So if you go to www.marshfieldutilities.org, if you click on customer information, we have a link under there for called outage preparedness, and we have a number of these tips are listed there for our customers to look at, and then we also have links to other websites with other ideas and other tips that our customers can use to help them be prepared for we all know it's not if a storm is going to come, it's when. We know another one's going to come at some point here in the future.
Yeah, definitely, and it could be in the winter as well with
Yes.
heavy ice and rain. We've had that, and that's a whole nother kind of issue. Even though it's not wind, it's weight of the ice that builds up on lines. We've had that quite a bit in the past few years. So, your utility also handles the water here too.
Yes.
And you kind of forget about that. But if the power goes out, can people still run the water? I guess it's a little bit different than a well, probably.
Yeah, we have some of our stations, our wells and treatment facilities do have backup power. So it's basically it's the extent of the outages. How large spread are they? With this most recent storm, we were somewhat to the western side of the city, and the southern side were the main areas that were impacted. So a lot of the things to the north weren't impacted at all. And luckily, that's the location of some of our wells, so they were able to continue to function throughout this power outage time.
All right. Well, that definitely helps us. We got to understand that we can't take water for granted either.
Right.
And you guys help with that as well. So.
And that's maybe another tip as well, is just have customers think if the power is going to be out for a few hours, a few days, they should have maybe a couple gallons of water on hand so that they're able to make it through the next day or hours, whatever it might be.
Yeah, and that's really easy. You can go to the grocery store and get it for 89 cents.
Right.
And it lasts for quite a long time. I would assume you don't need to even refrigerate it.
Right.
Put it in a storage area, buy bottled water, whatever, ready to go. I'm assuming, we're taping this today on the 28th of August. I want to date myself here, but we hear about the hurricane coming to Florida. That that can happen here. All of a sudden, nothing's happening, and it's something big, and then there's nothing. The stores are depleted. We haven't had that, thank gosh.
Right.
But time is now.
Yes.
Don't we?
Yeah.
Is what you're telling us.
Yeah,
So.
definitely. The next
Okay.
storm could pop up tomorrow, and as you mentioned, we could be impacted. We're in hurricane season, obviously, for the southern states and the eastern coast. But we could be hit during the summer, the fall, and obviously the winter with ice and snow and things of that nature as well.
Yeah, and you guys have a plan and ready in place, and you're always probably working on that with meetings every month to talk about how you can do things better or how it went, and trying to really work those out. And I think you, like you said earlier, you benefit by learning from other storms by helping other organizations, other cities as well. So I guess one last question, maybe it's kind of not on this topic, and you get your power. Not all. Power comes from a place. Is how that we can't generate all the power. I believe. I'm just curious. How does power get generated? Is it coal? Is it gas? I'm just kind of asking that question off without you knowing I was going to ask it. But I'm just curious. And where does it come from? And how does it get here?
It's all those answers are correct.
Okay.
The power is generated by coal, natural gas, hydro through dams, winds, solar, bio materials, things of that nature. You can kind of think of the power grid as the interstate system. It's all the generators are your cities, and they're connected through the interstate system or the transmission lines. So that helps. The power is generated on the eastern side of the state or the western side or the central side, and then the electrons flow to wherever they're needed to power the local communities.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me and our viewers on our cable station, as well as our social media pages. Much appreciated.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Well, I want to thank you guys as our viewers as well for joining me, Tom Laux, Communications Director for the City of Marshfield, and my guest, Nick Kumm, General Manager of Marshfield Utilities. And I think we've learned a lot, and we'll invite him back down the road again, maybe next year or come winter if there's something different that we need to bring up or if something happens. So again, I'm Tom Laux. Thanks for joining me on Marshfield Media Access and for Connections, my weekly show.